Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to back to the channel. So in this video I thought we would do a comparison between fluorocarbon and monofilament fishing lines, especially for the beginner angler. This was something that I used to discuss a lot with brand new anglers when I worked for Bass Pro. For the while I worked for Bass Pro, a lot of people have misconceptions between the difference. There is a difference. There's, some rather glaring differences between monofilament and fluorocarbon. And there's also different applications for it. You don't just use a stronger fishing line because the line won't break. You'd be surprised how many people new to the sport will come in and ask, I want to use this particular fishing. I mean, ultimately, it's your decision what you want to put on your fishing reel. But this is just to give you a little bit of information so you might have a better understanding as to why you may not want to use monofilament or may not want to use a fluorocarbon. So I'm going to pop a chart up which shows you comparisons between the two fishing lines. I'm going to go through each item with you so that you can understand the pros and the cons of using either or. All right, let's go. So we've got the category, which is materials, density, visibility, stretch, stiffness, water absorption, abrasion resistance, knot strength, and UV resistance. These are all very important things when it comes to using fishing line. And then we have, of course, the fluorocarbon, and then we have monofilament. So let's take a look at the very first one when talk about material. Fluorocarbon is known as PVDF, and that is the polyvinylidene feature. It's a material that is a very dense, very rigid polymer. It's used in a lot of industrial applications other than fishing, but it's a very dense polymer, where your monofilament is just your basic nylon flexible polymer. So right there, there's two differences. It's not exactly the same in its material. Now, density. We talk about density with fishing line. We know that fluorocarbon sinks, and here's the ratio. It's 1.78 grams per cubic centimeters. Grams per cubic centimeters is used to measure density. And the benchmark is the density of water, which is 1 gram per cubic centimeter. Now, if you notice with the fluorocarbon, it's 1.78. All right, so that is nearly 2/3 more than what the density of water is. So therefore, this will sink. All right, it's heavier than the density of water. Now we go over to our monofilament line and we'll say it's near neutral. It's only like 0.10 to 0.15 grams per cubed centimeters heavier than water. So it will sink a little bit, but it's a heck of a lot more buoyant than the fluorocarbon. And the buoyancy or lack of can be beneficial depending on your fishing application, all right? Sometimes you want it to sink and sometimes you don't want it sinking all the time. You want some buoyancy in the line. So again, fluorocarbon, monofilament, depending on the application of your what you're fishing for. Now, another thing to take into consideration here, which is also very interesting with fluorocarbon, is the visibility. And we're going to talk here about the refraction index. So the refraction index of water at 20 degrees Celsius is 1.33, and that is the speed of light that travels through a liquid water in this case. It is slower than the speed of light that travels through a vacuum, like outer space. It's a lot faster. And refractive index varies depending on temperature. And now this 1.33 is, as I said, based on being at a temperature of 20 degrees Celsius. The refractive index on fluorocarbon is very close to that of water. It's like water is 1.33, and I think, fluorocarbon is around the 1.32, something like that. So because of that, it's almost virtually invisible. But that doesn't mean it is totally invisible. There's certain variables that come into play here. The refractive index will change depending on the temperature of the water. The warmer the water, the more visible. The colder the water, the less visible. And as we know in the water column, the temperature changes in the water column. So that's something that, you know, you don't really have to worry about, but that is present with using fluorocarbon. With your monofilament, it's got a very high refractive index. In other words, it's more visible because its index is higher than 1.33 and therefore is more visible. If you ever look at your line when you're using monofilament and you're throwing it down into the water, you will see it go down the water column. It's very visible. And of course, fish can see it. Fish have excellent eyesight, so if you can see it, they definitely can. And this is why fluorocarbon is highly used as a leader on braid because of the lack of visibility of it in the water. Okay? All right, so keep that in mind. Visibility can be to your advantage, can be to your disadvantage. Next is stretch. Another thing that can be to your advantage and also to your disadvantage. Now with fluorocarbon, it's got low stretch, but it is incredibly sensitive. It low stretch because it is a more dense line and it's also coated. So you don't get that forgiveness with a fluorocarbon line. But you do get the sensitivity. You can feel every little nip, bump, and push down there. And you have to learn which is the right one before you set the hook. It does take time, but you'll get it. Just keep fishing, all right? But that, for sensitivity, next to braid, you can't beat it. With monofilament, it's got a very high stretch. It's almost elastic at times. But it is very shock absorbent. Now this makes this a good line for beginners. It's a lot more forgiving. And what do I mean by forgiving? Well, you know, when you set that hook, if you're using monofilament, you may get a second chance if you don't set the hook in the fish's jaw, if you don't feel it being, the fish being set, the hook being set, I should say. You will feel that tug. If you don't get it the first time, you can try a second time because 9 times out of 10 the line is stretched a bit, but the hook is still in the fish's mouth. But with fluorocarbon, you can't do that. More than likely, that first set, if you miss it, you've pulled the hook right out of the mouth because it doesn't have the stretch that monofilament has. And that's what they mean by being more forgiving. Stiffness. Fluorocarbon, yes, is very stiff. And because of its stiffness, it has high memory. And what does that mean? Well, this is where fluorocarbon can be annoying, especially on a spinning system. Really, fluorocarbon is better off on a casting system. Although with the modern lines today, you can use them on spinning systems. They are a bit better on spinning systems. But at one time, a lot of anglers used to take their line and soak it in hot water first to make it more flexible before they used it. And memory, I'm talking about the coils. The way the line coils when it comes off the reel. Spinning reels, the line comes off perpendicular to the blank. A casting reel, the line comes off parallel to the blank. Now that's why in a casting situation, fluorocarbon is a lot better because you're stretching it out as it comes off the reel. When it comes off the reel in the spinning reel, it comes off like this. And because it has high memory, it's more apt to maintain the shape of the spool after a while, and you get that curl. And that can be very annoying. Very annoying. You get wind knots and things like that. And usually when you get knotted, you end up losing a lot of line. And that's why I say monofilament is better for a beginner because it's cheaper. All right. So that's one of the drawbacks of using the fluorocarbon is it's stiff and it has high memory. Now with our friend, the monofilament line is a lot softer and therefore it has low memory. It will still spiral after if it's been on the reel for a long time, but it stretches out a lot easier than the monofilament. You don't have to soak it. You can just stretch it out. And that's what I do with my fluorocarbon. I will cast out as far as I can, and then I'll grab it with my index and thumb as I'm reeling it in and pinch, and I'll wind it back in, and it stretches it out, and it gets that kink out of it. That's something you're going to have to keep in mind when you're using fluorocarbon is it will twist. It's a pain. Okay? Just keep it in mind. Water absorption. It's almost zero. It doesn't absorb water, which is good. It stays dry. and it's consistent in its performance when it comes to water absorption. It doesn't vary. With our friend monofilament, it does, and this will soften the line, and then it weakens the line. Okay, it can make it too stretchy and too saturated, and then it can break. So the water absorption is a positive thing with fluoro, not so much with monofilament. Abrasion resistant, yes, it's excellent because it's got that hard outer shell, so it's very resistant to rubbing and abrasing. Monofilament, it's moderate. You can get some better lines now. They are making them a lot better than what they used to. They're not as soft. But I would say it's a moderate thing with the monofilament. You will get rubbing, and you'll see it. It becomes very obvious after a while on monofilament line. Knot strength. Now this is important. Knot strength. Fluorocarbon, because of its stiffness, it has its knot strength is a little low, and that coating does cause micro cracks, and that will weaken the line. With your monofilament, you've got a higher strength because it's not as stiff, it's more forgiving. Now what that means here is when you're tying a knot with monofilament, the coils, when you cinch down and tighten that knot, when you go to tag it off, they will dig in to that tag end. I'm going to throw up an image here. You can see the tag end here. The knots, the coils of the knot dig into that to lock in, and they will do more so with monofilament because it's softer. Now with the fluorocarbon, it's not as soft, and they can slip. The coils can actually slip over the tag end. So what I do, for me, when I'm using a fluorocarbon leader or fluorocarbon straight through on my setup, I will not cut the tag as close to the knot coils as I would with monofilament. By leaving a little bit more of a tag in your knot, this allows the coils something to lock down on. So it won't slip up over the tag. Once a coil does that, and it can do it on fluorocarbon, then the whole nut comes undone. On monofilament, it digs in. You don't have that worry. You can cut that tag a little bit lower, down almost to the top of the coil. But with fluorocarbon, I recommend you leave a bit more of a tag in your knot to allow it to lock down so it doesn't slip over the tag and then ultimately undo itself. UV resistance. Well, we've all heard, well, don't leave your fishing rods out in the sun, and the it's actually a very high resistance with fluorocarbon. It's pretty durable, and that again is all to do with the coating that's on it. All right. However, eventually fluorocarbon will deteriorate, but not as fast as monofilament. So yeah, you can leave it out and let it dry off. But with mono, no. People like to throw them in the back of truck beds or leaning them up against the side of the shed when they're finished. UV will just destroy monofilament. It destroys it, deteriorates it very quickly. What it does is it dries out the nylon polymer and it becomes brittle, and that's where you'll get crack-offs and breaks and stuff like that. So it is not recommended that you leave your fishing rods in the bed of your truck or leaning up against the side of a shed when you're not using them. All right, you can get away with that with fluoro, but you can't really get away with that using monofilament. So those are the pros and cons, okay? Now the third line, I'm just going to mention here, I'm going to do a different video on that, and that is the copolymer lines, which are kind of a cross between a monofilament and a fluorocarbon. What they are, they're a fishing line that has a monofilament core with a coating of the polyvinylidene around it, and it gives you the benefits of kind of both different lines. I'm going to go into that a little bit different later on. Not all anglers like using the copolymer. They would prefer to either use 100% fluorocarbon or 100% monofilament. But again, the type of line that you use depends on the type of fishing you're doing and the species that you're going after. And these are things that as beginners you have to learn. Do not buy the line simply because it doesn't break. That's not why you buy braid. It's not why you buy fluorocarbon, or copolymer lines, because the line doesn't break as easily as monofilament, because my buddy uses it. That's not why you buy that type of line. Monofilament is great to learn with, okay? It's inexpensive and it's more forgiving. You will waistline as a beginner. You'll get snagged. You'll get knotted. You'll need to cut chunks out of it. And when you're paying $60 for one spool, you're going to think twice about cutting out chunks and throwing it away. With monofilament, you can get away with doing it because you're only paying probably $7 or $8 a spool. There's a big difference. And you can learn how to fish properly and then go to the other lines, again, depending on your situation and what you're fishing for, all right? So yes, fluorocarbon is not cheap, and it's really meant for the experienced angler. It has its pros and cons, just like monofilament does and just like braid does. I use it mainly for a leader material, but I do have two setups where I have it all the way through, and I've been very fortunate with it because I like the sensitivity. It is very strong line. Yes, it has helped me catch some really nice fish where I probably would have lost them with the monofilament, but and I only use braid very rarely. So it kind of compensates for not using braid. But it is a good line, and so is monofilament. So again, for you beginners, go with the mono, okay? And then graduate to fluorocarbon or braid. All right, so hope you learned something today from this video. And until our next video, whenever that's going to be, this is Sharon saying tight lines and bye-bye for now.
Totally, dude.